In Southern California. It's time for your Morning Buzz. We bring you late-breaking news that keeps you up to date with what's happening in the cannabis industry.
All right. Welcome to the Trichome's Morning Buzz. It's Friday, May 13th, and here are your top cannabis headlines. Feds funding research on role of cannabis in treating cancer. Next up is FDA researchers publish first study on medical cannabis testing patchwork. And last up, we've got congressional lawmakers push for marijuana banking at first conference meeting on large-scale manufacturing bill. So to get straight up into it, we're going over to Feds funding research on role of cannabis in treating cancer. The federal government is promoting funding opportunities for researchers to study the benefits and risks of marijuana for cancer patients. In a notice of special interest posted by the National Institute of Health on Thursday, the agency said that 1 of 4 cancer patients have reported using cannabis products to manage their symptoms, including anorexia, nausea, and pain. But, quote unquote, research about their health effects, including potential harms and benefits, remain limited. NIH National Cancer Institute said that the purpose of the solicitation is to promote research in understanding the mechanisms by which cannabis and cannabinoids affect cancer biology, cancer interception, cancer treatment, resistance, and management of cancer symptoms. Excuse me. Let's see here. NIH said the current body of epidemiological studies on this topic has yielded limited and inconsistent results, quote unquote. For example, why cannabis smoke may be harmful, may contain harmful constituents. It has been directly linked to an increased risk of lung cancer, the notice says. The agency said studies of other cancer types have shown no or inconsistent association with cannabis use, but these data are limited. Cancer cell line experiments show that THC and CBD can mediate any anti-tumor effects, including inducing apoptosis and inhibiting cell proliferation, invasions, and angiogenesis. It continues, the anti-tumor activities have led to an early clinical testing of THC and CBD for glioblastoma and prostate cancers. Jeez Louise, lots of big words and I'm tripping over all of them. So we'll go back to that one real quick. We'll go over the list real quick. Here's a list of research topics that NIH is seeking studies on with various funding opportunities. Understanding how exogenous cannabis and cannabinoids affect cancer development and biology, including tumor microenvironment. Understanding how endogenous cannabinoid pathways influence cancer development and biology. Defining the effects of cannabis and cannabinoids on cancer treatment, particularly targeted treatments and immunotherapy, and the development of treatment resistance. Understanding the use of cannabis and cannabinoids in cancer interception and delineating how endocannabinoid signaling pathways may inhibit early cancers. Defining the mechanisms of cannabis and cannabinoid action in alleviating symptoms of cancer and cancer treatment. Understanding the combination effect of cannabis and cannabinoids in conjunction with other factors, such as tobacco, alcohol, microbiome or diet, on cancer biology, treatment, and symptom management. Identifying biological mechanisms underlying disparities in sex or ethnicity in cannabis and cannabinoid action in cancer biology, treatment, or symptom management. And finally, developing or validating new and human relevant model systems to understand cannabis and cannabinoid action on cancer biology, treatment, or symptom management. Holy moly, that was a mouthful. We're going to go head on into our next story as to where a different agency, the FDA, which sometimes is associated with the federal government, but is its own independent research study group. FDA researchers published first study on medical cannabis testing patchwork. There's an expanding patchwork of cannabis policies around the United States, and this applies to testing standards from state to state. Researchers with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration published a study in March in a peer-reviewed journal of cannabis and cannabinoid research that highlights just how disparate medical cannabis testing rules are. Today, cannabis is legal for medical use in dozens of states, and while these state programs have plenty of overlap, no state is completely like another. So this is largely a product of the lack of top-down guidance from the federal government, which prohibits cannabis for any use, and the passage of these state laws uh, for over the course of more than 25 years. In order to better understand the quality of cannabis found in these programs, the study noted the researchers collected laws, regulations, guidance documents available on public state run websites and compared them with current good manufacturing practices, or CGMPs, applicable to finished drug products. Um, we are aware that there does seem to be an increased public interest in using cannabis and cannabinoid derived compounds. They are super aware, Jesus. we, we are aware that there does seem to be an increased public interest in using cannabis and cannabinoid derived compounds from the state regulated dispensaries in human clinical trials. So we really want to better understand the types of quality related tests that these products undergo at each level, said Cassandra Taylor, a chemist for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration within the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, the CDER. Um, and it goes on to say, in the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. That's a big title there. Understanding the products sold at the state level is a rising priority among federal officials and lawmakers. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, is starting to look at products sold by the state licensed operators and state legal shops. And a bill that passed out of the House last month would allow researchers to access these products for research. We've talked about that before, where the DEA has been granted the right to grab products from dispensaries and that kind of thing, rather than just having to utilize products produced at the University of Mississippi. Let's see. We are also interested in understanding how the various state regulations on testing for cannabis and cannabis-derived products are accessible in these state medical programs and how they compare to our regulations for human drug products. Such a comparison will aid the development of consistent quality standards that could in turn improve the quality of a wide range of cannabis medical products in development that may be sold in the United States, researchers wrote. States may likewise choose to have the cannabis and cannabis derived products that fall within their medical cannabis program to follow quality focused guidelines, such as those listed in uh, the current good manufacturing practices, to ensure the quality of these products and promote health product. Well, we've talked about it before, the difference between the illicit market and the legal market with testing and that kind of stuff. But really, this is going further into denoting the disparity between different testing outfits and different states and that kind of thing. The level for I guess mistakes, the percentage of variance is what they call it. The percentage of variance varies from state to state as well as from lab to lab. So it boils down to what chemicals they're using, what type of control samples they're using, all that kind of stuff. So we'll get back into that and talk about that here shortly. And with last up, we've got congressional lawmakers push for marijuana banking at first conference meeting on large-scale manufacturing bill. And this is something we've been following for a while here. Essentially, we've got the Safe Banking Act that's up, and we've got all sorts of politics going around it. Ultimately, you've got Schumer and that bunch who wants the MORE Act to pass first, and you've got a couple different partisan agendas that are playing out here. But when it comes down to the safety of the purveyors, the safety of the dispensary owners, and really just as equally as important is the people who are patrons of these establishments are in danger. And actually, I think what was his name? Blumenauer said it best. It's a life and death issue, right? And so again, the title is Congressional Lawmakers Push for Marijuana Banking at First Conference Meeting on Large-Scale Manufacturing Bill. A bicameral congressional conference committee tasked with settling differences on large-scale manufacturing bill kicked off negotiations on Thursday, and several appointed conferees of the House and Senate took the opportunity to push for marijuana banking reform as part of the package. At least 7 members made the point to raise the cannabis issue as part of the discussion on the America Competes Act, most of them in a supportive way. This includes the conference committee co-chair, Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington. Conferees emphasized the need to give state legal marijuana businesses access to traditional financial services as a public safety imperative that could also bolster the economy. And this Congress has a chance to deal with several longstanding policy challenges, Earl Blumauer said from Oregon. That includes providing cannabis businesses with access to banking. It's critical that the Safe Banking Act be retained, the congressman said, adding that there were 3 people killed in the chairwoman's home state of Washington in a span of 1 week in the incidents targeting marijuana businesses. The Safe Banking Act is an issue of public and worker safety, he said. It's passed the House 6 times, and I hope we work together to retain it because it is a matter of life and death. Representative Maxine Waters from California, who co-chairs the House Financial Services Committee and previously listed marijuana banking as legislative priority ahead of the conference, said that the bipartisan House supports the Safe Banking Act and is evident in its inclusion in the American Competes. I urge my fellow conferees to support its inclusion in the final conference report. So, what that says is that this Safe Banking Act has a pretty decent amount of steam heading into this vote. And realistically, I'm thinking that we're going to see the Safe Banking Act happen before we get the MORE Act, which, because of the insynchronicities, because of the disparities, the differences in the partisan takes on how we should legalize this, essentially safety for within the people that do have states that govern laws that allow for dispensaries and people to go purchase and that kind of thing. We do need to create a safe environment for those places now, as soon as possible. And really, the Safe Banking Act would liberate and enable banks at these home states to act a little more freely in regards to banking cannabis and the cash that comes with it. I mean, shoot, if I actually can't tell you how many bank accounts I've had shut down. I can't tell you how many of my partners and fellow business associates here in the cannabis industry. It's hundreds of bank accounts have been shut down. Myself personally, well into the 20 range. And that's because of cannabis related, right? I never really actually tried to bank a cannabis business where the weed came or the money came in from actual sales of weed. But a good friend of mine and partner of mine owns a hydroponic store, and a lot of people go to hydroponic stores. They sell cannabis. Funny enough, a lot of people kept their money with their cannabis in safes and all that kind of stuff, and the money would smell like weed. Well, go try to deposit $30,000 into a bank and say you're not from a dispensary. They're going to laugh at you, and that's a tough problem there. So, jumping out of those stories into the comments real quick. Laura Camp, good morning. Good to see you. Steve Woods, Little Mac 86, Joey 420, got all the usual suspects here up here. Coconut Jive, good to see you. DRS Metal, Cannabis Global Network, excuse me. Good to see everybody out here. Let's see. Kingfish, Bill, good morning. Hope everything's going well in Texas. You guys got some new counties that are decriminalizing. I know Austin voted in favor of the decriminalization and no-knock warrant, so that's awesome. And yeah, Timothy DeMattis, good to see you too. Donkey Limit, happy Friday. Good to see you. All right, Lost 96er, good morning. All right, let me get back up to a couple of these questions here. So Laura, so they are going to prove weed can cure cancer. Bring it on. Essentially, that's what we're looking for. Is it a cure? That's left to be seen. But believe that there's masses of anecdotal evidence in the categories in which they said when they're talking about anorexia and nausea and all that kind of stuff, as to where people are going through treatments, including chemo, that it is something that helps with eating, which the body needs food to help heal itself, and sleeping, and all that kind of stuff, and even pain management. So I do believe this is walking down the right path. It's just who's administering these tests, and in the name of human interest, right? We want this to be something that big pharma doesn't control, because essentially that's something we all worry about. So let's see here. The RS Metal. Watch Montel Williams. Let's be blunt. The latest episode talks about cannabis treating cancer, and I there's so many people out there who have benefited from it. I've been there. I um, went to the UCLA. It was a medical center where essentially they were going into cancer and cannabinoids a while ago, and really at that juncture when my uncle had cancer and then subsequently passed, they were talking about how the use of cannabis could be good during some treatments, but that was about it. They wouldn't talk about uh, any of the research that they had done. It was just basically the fact that if you are going through cancer treatments, if you are in chemo, if you're going through different things, even here at the hospital, let's talk about a regimen of which you might be able to try, and at that juncture, we were kind of let down because we were thinking UCLA was going to lead the way in this thought, and really it kind of went the other way with it. But um, I saw some amazing things with my uncle before he went off program with it, and he did some things in his life of which, yeah, man, from running a cleanse, which the doctors in turn told him, wiped out a lot of his good biome in his body and that kind of stuff. He did a flush right before he went to Europe, and he knew he couldn't take his RSO to Europe, so he did this flush, and he went clean, and he came back barely able to walk from Europe. The cancer had riddled his body and taken things over, as to where when he left, we were seeing an actual a downward trend of his PSA numbers, a miraculous downward trend, of which, again, it was documented. The doctors knew somewhat about his treatments, but again, it wasn't scientific and leads to anecdotal. This is something that I experienced in my life, but it still is anecdotal until we're able to scientifically prove why this is happening, especially when it comes down to the masses, right? I mean, we as people here and everybody in the comments can have anecdotal evidence here, but again, as we were talking about yesterday, we're our own little snowflakes. So there's a whole bunch of mitigating factors of treatment that go into these treatments. Like they were talking about whether you smoke cigarettes, alcohol consumption, different mitigating other physical malfeasances, or being sick in other ways besides the cancer. All these things affect how it's going. Let's see. Cannabis Global Network. Good morning. Just to let everyone know, they tucked the Safe Banking Act into the Trade Act, and it'll more than likely pass. But the more act will probably stall out. It's all about making the most money. Um, I'm going to have to agree that I think the Safe Banking Act will pass here in this American Competes Act, because essentially it's about safety. The government itself can say it's about safety, but also, like you said, it's about the money. So really, is it are we going to stand on principle of not protecting other people because of the politicians not getting it right, stalling out again? No, I think essentially we need to get something in there that protects the purveyors of this industry in the states where it's legal, and I think that's the biggest thing here. Little Mac 86. I watched my mom suffer during chemotherapy because she wouldn't take the cannabis I was offering her. All died to government brainwashing, and that it was bad and illegal. Excuse me, due do not die due to government brainwashing that it was all bad and illegal. And yeah, and again, it's tough to outlive the cognitive dissonance that goes along with being raised a certain way and understanding a certain having an understanding about cannabis as the devil's lettuce or something that's you know bad for you on most levels, if not all. Is how it's all explained to all of us, I think, here in this generation. And up into a certain age, just recently, right? So yeah, it's tough because it is basically brainwashing that we all went through in our early lives with this. And Joey 420, my condolences, Little Mac. I lost my mom too. She had some kind of bone cancer, and I'm sorry, Little Mac and Joey 420 as well. It's tough. It's tough going through that with someone you love and care about, knowing that you have something that, in the very least, could help with their daily quality of life as they're going through this, regardless of it being a cure, regardless of anything else, is as they're going through doctor appointed treatments, doctor prescribed treatments. If you can help with the quality of life and what's going on, you want to. And realistically, during those time periods, because of it being life and death and these treatments, being something that are medical practice, right? That's what the medical community always talks about, is the medical practice behind it. Is people who are fighting for their lives are really scared to put something that has been so controversial in their body during this point in time. And also, it's one of those things as to where people forget about the effects and the side effects that come along with the drugs prescribed and the chemo prescribed by the doctors, because they are sustaining effects from what they're going through that way, right? It's the nausea, the unable to sleep, the pain, all that kind of stuff is there. But on the other hand, when talking about or taking cannabis, they're like, oh, it gets me too inebriated, or I get too high, I get too stoned. When the alternative is sitting in a chair taking chemo treatment and then going and throwing up, or having your days taken away anyway. It's it's disheartening, because essentially, with more research over the last decade, who knows, out of Little Mac and Joey 420 and my uncle, who knows who could have had a better end of life, let alone a longer end of life, based upon knowing these facts as of now, as we should have. So it's real tough, and my condolences to everybody who's lost someone from cancer, because fuck cancer. And fuck the fact that we haven't figured this out by now. Sorry for the non-professional language here on the newscast, but it really is something that we should have figured out by now. Let's see here. Let's see here. Getting down. Holy moly, you guys are talkative this morning. I love this little group and community we've got going on here in the morning. It's a feel good group. I really like everybody's vibe in the morning. I just want to tell you guys, makes my morning a bit better too. And and if you didn't notice yet, I was here on time, 7:30. We made it. And from here going into the next week and from forward, 7:30 is going to be our time. I pledge my best effort to be here at 7:30 every morning, and I thank you all for joining. And with that, let's go ahead and, before I forget again, if it's your first time to the channel, which I know a lot of people in the comments it's not, but please make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because even yesterday somebody's out there and tagging all of our posts here in this community, on the YouTube community. Basically every post that I've done here for the Morning Buzz since I took it over, somebody's been flagging it. We've been getting restricted. I've been winning the appeals every time, but essentially we have been getting restricted. So it takes the oomph out of our initial drives. We're going to try to figure out exactly what it is. To believe that we probably have a couple people hating on us. Here's what it is. We'll figure it out. But the liking, sharing, and subscribing really helps us get out to those people that want to be a part of this conversation. And that's what we want here. So thanks a lot in advance for doing that. Let's go to this. Let's see. Donkey limit. This is tied to, believe it or not, the NIH and what constitutes a medical study, usually a few $1,000,000 and 100 million. Yes. When it comes down to it, the people paying for the studies a lot of times have the bias that we don't like uh, attached to it, and that's really what we have to do going forward is pay attention to who's funding these studies and what are the particular bullet points. That's why I read everything about what the FDA was looking for, and really that didn't sound too bad as long as these are studies funded in the best interest of human health, and not done through special interests and that kind of thing, of which, again, we all know the history with that. We're looking at something when it comes down to public safety, uh, the integration of cannabis as a medicine, the integration of cannabis as a recreational activity. We're going to have to go through these tests. We just want to make sure that these tests are done fairly and accurately on behalf of honesty, right, and the facts, the truth. So that's it. We do need to be um, cognizant, aware of who is funding these tests. Joy 420, it all involves our endocannabinoid system. Absolutely. Even down to the fact that we were talking about um, pregnant mothers and cannabis use during pregnancy yesterday. And one of the facts I forgot to bring up was, essentially, when it comes down to a baby after birth, where the first source of endocannabinoids or cannabinoids come from. And the babies get it from breast milk from their moms. It's proven. This is a scientific fact. I'm not making up something for the narrative, but you can find that essentially within our bodies having their own endocannabinoid systems and that kind of thing, the chemicals and the oh shoot, what are we talking about? The different, like human growth hormones and geez Louise, all the different things that help a baby develop going into things. Cannabinoids are part of that, right? So realistically, as we were talking about uh, cannabinoid use with pregnant moms, is it going to be the worst thing? Again, at this juncture, we have a lot of uh, anecdotal anecdotal type science where there's certain moms who praise it and there's certain moms who swear it off, but a lot of this is around smoking marijuana as opposed to different vehicles, whether it be patches, rubs and or tinctures or anything else ingested without carcinogenic effect of smoke. So I just wanted to add that to yesterday's conversation is essentially because, and again, Joey, thanks for bringing that up with the endocannabinoid system, is because we have an endocannabinoid system in our bodies that really is made for cannabinoids and the receptors thereof. It's it's a good hypothesis to say that essentially um, utilizing cannabis in whatever form may have a better effect than some of the other pharmaceuticals that are available to pregnant moms during that time period. And again, these are studies that we have to have come through in a non-biased fashion. So again, we can figure this out for ourselves, right? We want to know all these facts for ourselves. And as much as we as a community anecdotally know what makes us feel better and what kind of evens our keel, it's for instances like the pregnant moms and or people going through cancer that we really want to know the right answer, because essentially temporary comfort doesn't outweigh life, and that's really what we got to figure out here. So all right, we've got quite a few more comments. Let's see. Donkey limit. Cancer isn't cancer anymore. It's a bunch of different things that cause cancer. Cannabis could just as easily be bad for some as it is good for others. 100%. Just basically what we were talking about. And really, that's, I think, what the inherent good nature of our community and the people who are joining in on this this live cast and our conversation is that we want the truth. And ultimately, we want to be able to make our minds up with the truth and without the, again, I use the term cognitive dissonance, because you grow up learning one thing, and then you feel and you experience another, right? And really, in the end of it, it's like, hey, you know what? Recreationally, if I want to do this for myself, well, that's one thing, and we know that daily use compared to alcohol, you're going to be left with a lot different of a side effect than most people using alcohol and consuming alcohol on a daily basis. And really knowing the facts and making decisions for yourself, and or for loved ones with all the facts is part of the biggest part right now. So I agree with you, Donkey Limit. It's really about knowing the symptomology, knowing what you're going through, and then having all the right answers for whether or not cannabis may or may not be a treatment for you. Let's see here. All right. As we're going through here, I just want to let you guys know today is the day we've got the Friday weekly roll up. Today, we will be going over some of the federal stances and including one of the topics we had today. But we are going to be joined by Steve Hawkins again, one of my favorite people from the USCC, who will be going over this stuff and the Washington politics and that kind of thing. And you know what? I'll try to bait him into a couple conversations about the FDA and see what his thoughts are about that. So let's see here. Um, Phil, thanks for your support. Always love having you aboard here. Thank you very much. Um, Democrats and Republicans should be forced to represent their people correctly for their states. Jesse James, 2401. You know what? Absolutely. Absolutely. And really, the way we hold them to that is by voting them in and out during term elections like this. Coming up in November, you're going to have a chance on the local level to speak your voice through your vote, and make sure you do so. That's what this particular show is about, is getting the facts as they may be in front of people so that they can act locally, and hopefully affect things on a global level, because again, as we've spoken about on the show, is the US is really a leader in the market on how cannabis is perceived, in the global market on how cannabis is perceived. So let's see here. Let's see. All right. So, when it comes down to the politics and that kind of stuff, sitting on either side of the aisle, I've told you guys before, I'm pretty much right in the middle of it and watching both sides kind of do what they do. So political wise, I'm not gonna get into either side of it, but again, holding either side, either party to what they say they're gonna do as far as um, how they manipulate people or thoughts to get into where they want to get and hold offices they want to get. They should be held accountable. And right now, um, the accountability is held through the vote. If they're doing things that are against what the will of the people, um, is, then essentially they should be voted out. No ifs, ands, and buts, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on. All right. So, I know we've got a couple conversations going back and forth here, and again, that's part of the thing I love most about this is that uh, people who have joined this conversation are passionate about cannabis, and that's really where the start happened. When it comes down to how cannabis became what it is today, it's because of people like you, because of people like us that talk about it, that bring it to the forefront, that show the anecdotal evidence of it making a difference in somebody's life when somebody needed it. And it takes all levels of this. And really, just because we are here doesn't mean we agree on all levels. Doesn't mean that we're going to see things eye to eye on all different agendas. But when it comes down to cannabis, I know that everybody here participating in the comments, and it's one of the regulars. It is paramount that we get it right. So I really have enjoyed the banter back and forth. Really like seeing everybody comment and throw up the opinions, because essentially, it's how we learn, all of us, including myself. And so thank you, everybody out there, for helping me open my eyes to quite a few different subjects along the way here. I'm really excited about where we're going to end up come November. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in these primaries, and I really look forward to continuing the conversation. And that's done a little bit later today at noon Pacific time. We'll be jumping on with Steve Hopkins, so make sure go ahead and set the reminder for that. But otherwise, I am definitely going to be back on Monday with the Morning Buzz. We'll be talking about anything that happens over the weekend, and I definitely look forward to opening up the conversation again and catching you all in the comments. So thank you very much for participating, and I hope everyone has a safe and blessed weekend. Be well, stay safe, and we'll talk on we'll talk later this afternoon, but we'll talk on Monday for this group here. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great weekend.